Okay, good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Simon Jacobson, as you just mentioned. Yes, you're in the right place. It's always an honor. I see some faces I haven't seen before, but I'm sure our souls met before as well, because the mystics say that souls travel in different ways than bodies do. See, a body travels with our legs, or with a cab, or with a motorcycle, or the other vehicles that we all have. And souls have their own trajectory and intersect in their own ways. So sometimes you meet somebody, you like say, I don't know really where I met them before, but I recognize something, like something resonance. It's like hearing a song that you can't really recognize, but you feel and sense you heard it somewhere. So they say, these mystics, that when the soul comes down to earth from its own plane, from its own dimension, so you spend 9 months in your mother's womb, whether you like it or not, and whether your mother likes it or not, for that matter. And you're very well protected there, even from your mother's neurosis. That's how it is. The womb is a very, very protective place. It's unbelievable, actually, how it protects a child from all the elements, and even from the moods that your mother may have. Obviously, God forbid, alcohol or drugs or other things can affect a fetus. But overall, you're well protected. And today, we're just beginning to discover, medicine is just beginning to discover some of the literally fascinating miracles of the development, the physiological development of a child. Now, why is that relevant? Because each of us started there. Again, whether you like it or not, that's where we all began. For 9 months in the fetal waters. Thank you. And however, what is less known in medicine is that, remember, not just the physical body of a child develops during these months, but also the soul, the psyche, because we're born with a personality. So even though a newborn may not be obvious what that personality is, but it doesn't just appear when you're 10 years old or 20 years old or 80 years old. It begins in a nucleus when we're born, or even before that. So those 9 months, what type of impact does it have on the development of a child? It's very difficult to gauge, because you can't send a therapist in with a sonogram to find out what the child is thinking or saying or feeling. It's not speaking yet. So we can take tests, pregnancy tests, and all the different abilities to be able to recognize the physical development, but the mental development, the emotional development, and the spiritual development, something that we don't yet have the tools to recognize. But the mystics do speak about this at length. And they speak about it in the context of actually song and music. They say that a soul, in those 9 months, as it begins to acclimate itself to a body, which is the beginning of life, soul and body meeting, that this child is exposed to different songs and different experiences on a spiritual level that, in a sense, empower it to face all the challenges it will need to face through life. And that's the reason that children respond to song and music without any training. It's been proven time and again, even a fetus, they play music. It's been we've witnessed that the child in its mother's womb will react to music. And of course, a newborn child will also. Now, why does the child know music? It's never heard it before, or so it seems. In a way, you could say the same thing about language. How does a child learn to speak so quickly? 2 years and suddenly knows language. Clearly, there's an intelligence the child carries before it begins to speak, and then when it hears its parents speak, it begins to relate, and something triggers within the child, and it begins to be able to articulate it in different forms, different language, and so on. Though this is not the theme of the evening, but as an introduction, I thought appropriate to share that all of us, therefore, know very little about ourselves. We know very little about the soul's resonance, what really resonates. And then we travel through life as we are now, adults, at least chronological adults, and we experience things. Many of them are unexpected. Most special experiences are often unplanned. You may suddenly meet somebody, you may hear something, you may travel somewhere for one reason, something else happens, and it triggers something. And it's called a resonating moment, a moment of truth, an epiphany, falling in love, a connection, an awesome connection to nature. I mean, it takes on many shapes and forms. What do you think is really happening? What's happening is that which lay embedded in your soul in a dormant state for so long has just simply come alive. So it was there all the time waiting. For people who travel on the soul plane, they can connect and access to this quicker than the rest of us, because that's where they live. In other words, bodies react to bodies and souls react to souls. Or to use another expression, words from the heart enter the heart. So if you hear someone talking from their mouths or from their brains or from their egos especially, it usually doesn't enter very deep. Because why would you be interested in another person's arrogance to pierce your life? However, when someone speaks from the heart, the expression goes, words from the heart enter the heart. Words from the brain enter one ear and go out the other. Sincerity is something we respond to. And you don't need to be prepared. We may have our guard up because we haven't met many sincere people. And we don't trust them, especially if your trust has been hurt, has been violated. But when we are open, sincerity doesn't need a lot of effort to break through. Sincerity touches because words from the heart enter the heart. Or the expression from the book of Proverbs, where he says, Kamayim aponim laponim kain leva adam la'adam, which means, as a face is reflected in water, one heart is reflected in another. So yes, in the simplest sense of the word, it's love. But it's deeper than love. It's not just romantic love, it's connection, really. When people make a connection, that's what's happening. And I'm not talking about a business connection with mutual interest, and it's all actually very calculated. I'm talking about the connections that happen that are not so calculated. The ones that happen more spontaneously, the ones that are more emotional, as you may connect to a song. It's exactly right. You hear a song and it connects with you. Why? Because the song has some message or some voice or some resonance that touches a part of you that is there all the time, and that's what's called resonance. This is an introduction to, I could say, the objective of why we're here this evening. As those of you who've been here before know, and I'll reiterate it, as you say, you have to always articulate your mission statement. The objective is not here to just talk, for me to talk, for you to listen, for me to teach something in the Torah or Judaism or psychological or spiritual or emotional, but it's to bond, to spiritually connect, which means that we are intersecting here, not just as bodies, but as souls. But no one can impose that, not me, not you. All we can do is speak from our hearts, which is what I try to do. And especially when it comes in the context of something called religious or Jewish or a guy with a beard and a yarmulke, right? You can see that. So there are many stereotypes associated with it. So for me, the challenge is particularly acute. I have to get beyond the stereotypes, besides just trying to be sincere, also beyond the stereotypes that all of us carry, whether we like it or not, that's how it is, and try to touch upon some themes that we all relate to, common themes that resonate for me, for you, because it's the struggles that we all deal with in life. Now, of course, each of us is in our own particular place. Some of us may be on our way out of a relationship, on our way into a relationship, on our way running from it as far as possible, no relationship. When it comes to relationships, you're somewhere in between what I just mentioned. Either in a bad one, in a good one, less common, out of a bad one, or out of a good one, or something in between. So everyone has their place in life. And then, of course, there's the economy and other factors that impact our lives, our work, our jobs, and so on. And I'm sure some of you also grieving over Michael Jackson. So that, too, has to be taken account. And we have many things that are going on in our lives. And we have, last but not least, of course, is our own psychological, demons that haunt us. And these may be voices of our parents that never go away, or other factors that shaped us when we were younger. And though we may not always be obsessing with it, but it's part of our beings. So I'm not here to tell you exactly where you are, because each of you hopefully knows a bit at least. But what we also have is some things that are common. That first of all, we go through and deal with certain pains a certain same way. And there are things we can't teach each other. Now, I come from a background of a time-tested system that is based on mysticism, a spiritual system, a psychological system, an emotional system that's much more profound than just the dogma or the rules and regulations of certain rituals. Often religion, especially including Judaism, and identified as Orthodox Judaism, ultra-Orthodox Judaism. And many people would put me into that category, which, as some of you know, I abhor actually. First of all, I abhor being put into category, like I'm sure you don't like as well. Nobody wants to be put into some box. But more importantly, for me, spirituality defies man-made conventions. So to say someone is Orthodox, conservative, or Reform, Reconstructionist, Jews for Jesus, or atheist, these are labels. Is a soul Orthodox, conservative, or Reform? Is a soul black or white? Rectangle, square, or round? Is a soul defined by what we call brands? These are man-made brands. A soul is a spiritual entity. It's not man-made. That's why it has such power. And none of us know what kind of soul each of the other has. All we know is that we are all like musical notes in one large composition, indispensable, and that we need each other to complement each other. And therefore, it's an honor to sit with you as kindred musical notes. So that is essentially the purpose of our being here. Now, of course, I can just go on, wax eloquent about this topic itself, but there is a theme that we try to address. We do live on Earth where it's important to have themes, and not just talk in an amorphous way. So being that it's 4th of July, and in people's minds, going on vacation, whatever 4th of July is for you, usually for most people just simply an excuse to get out of work, and sometimes it's associated with deeper things than escapism. So I thought it's appropriate to talk about a topic related, we call it Independence Day. But not the one that was like the film a few years ago, the popular film, Independence Day. We won't address that. But to address the theme of independence. So everyone knows why it's called Independence Day, because the Declaration of Independence, declared over 200 years ago by the Founding Fathers, declaring the independence of this country, United States of America, from sovereign rule of King George of Great Britain. And then became the first, essentially, democracy, the United States. And it's much to celebrate freedom, the Bill of Rights, the freedom to choose, the freedom of religion, the freedom of speech, other freedoms that we have to pursue happiness. And it shouldn't be taken for granted, because this was not always the case. History is not a witness to such freedoms. As a matter of fact, most of history was not ruled by freedom. It was ruled by totalitarians. It was ruled by fascists. It was ruled by individuals who imposed their rule over the multitudes. And there was no such thing as guaranteeing someone freedom of anything. As Jews particularly, to sit here this evening and be able to talk whatever we like to talk about, study, teach, sing, pray, whatever it is, was not a guaranteed right just a few years ago. In other parts of the world, just 67 years ago, we know what happened in Europe, in Nazi Europe. You go back 10, 20 years ago, there was the former Soviet Union, and religion was not allowed, persecuted. People come together like this could be arrested and killed. If you go back 100 years ago, 200 years ago, altogether, almost nowhere in the world exists just this basic freedom. So there's no question that we have to acknowledge our blessings, which often is not we don't do because we take it for granted. Born into freedom, you think it's your right. It is our right, but we take it for granted and we become apathetic, complacent. And the guy said to his friend, "What's worse, apathy or ignorance?" And he answered, "I don't know and I don't care." Right? Yeah. So that is definitely something that should be acknowledged. However, A more profound and maybe more relevant question is this. Talk about independence and freedom. So they say we're free, right? So how many people really feel they're free? Since I was talking about parents before, are we free from the influences of our parents? Can you ever be free? And what about all the other subjective forces that have shaped you? Something traumatic happened to you when you're a child. You're not free of that ever. It will never go away. You can heal from it. You can grow through it. But to just say, oh, I'm just free? Is there such a thing as a free human being? We are subjective creatures who are dependent, especially in our early formative years, on others. The schools you went to, the attitudes you have, were all shaped. You were shaped before you had any choices to make. So where exactly is there true independence? So it's true there is no one taking away from the fact on a so-called institutionalized level, government, we have freedoms that the government guarantees us. But does that make us more free? Because you can speak freely. You can read whatever you like. You can practice religion and the other rights of the Bill of Rights guarantees us. Does that in any way make you a freer person from your own psychological fears, insecurities, the need to be accepted by others, the expectations and the demands that others put upon us, many of them unhealthy even? So it's an interesting question if you're talking about Independence Day. Maybe it's a little too heavy for vacation time, but hey, so what? You can always choose to erase your hard drive after tonight's class, okay? So I want to address this topic because I think it's a vital one, because it's also very deceptive to say somebody's free. To say we're free, interestingly. So what about, let's call our grandparents and ancestors 300-400 years ago, where they lived under an inquisition, let's say, in Spain or Portugal, or they lived under pogroms, were expelled from countries, or were killed and massacred simply because they were Jewish. Were they less free than we are? So yes, on the level, again, institutional level, absolutely less free. They were not allowed to just practice whatever they want. They couldn't say what they want. They couldn't even live in their country at peace, expelled from one to the next, which is really the history almost of every country in Europe, most of the world. Whereas, let's say, the country of the United States has definitely opened up its borders and welcomed the Jewish people. And when I say Jewish, I'm just using that as an example. It could be any people, a melting pot, and allowed people to practice their religion freely. So, of course, we are more free than our grandparents and great-grandparents were. But on the level that I was discussing psychological freedom, are we more free than they? The argument can be made they were much freer than we were. When you read some of their writings, you read their life stories, it seemed that they were much more at peace with their existential challenges than people are today. A lot less neurosis, less therapy. So it's true you could argue that if they had lasted on any piece of land in Europe for longer than 10 years, maybe they'd have time for therapists. By the time, whereas not, here we have that indulgence because we can indulge. And of course, when you're running for your life and you're fighting for what you believe in, do you really have time for your it's the neurotic issues? So the question of freedom is a much more profound one than just on the institutional governmental level. I just want to reiterate, I'm not dismissing at all the beauty and blessings of our time. Obviously, it's great blessings. Our grandparents looking ahead, seeing a time like ours would consider this to be Messianic age, simply from the freedoms that I'm describing here. However, I'm addressing it much more on a personal level. And what I want to share here this evening is that there are some secrets. I know the word secret made a certain book a bestseller, so I guess you use the word secret, people perk up their ears. But the truth is the word sod in Hebrew, which means secret, is actually a word used quite often by the Kabbalists, especially the Arizal. Isaac Lurie uses the word sod very often, Seid HaTzimtzum, the secret of the Tzimtzum. Seid HaIbr, the secret of the pregnancy. He uses that word very often, and also in the Zohar, Roz in Aramaic is a secret. Now a secret simply means it's something that is there, but we don't see it. As I said earlier, to discover the song of your soul is also a secret, because it's there inside of you. You carry it all the time, and you were not aware of it. So when you talk about the secret of independence, there is a secret, that we all have a power to achieve that type of independence. despite the fact, despite the reality that I described, that each of us is a product of our environment, a product of our parents, a product of many circumstances. And yet you'll see, as we discuss this evening, that there are people also who had parents. Everyone has parents. Everyone is a product of their environment. Yet you'll find some people have learned to achieve independence, and others have not. If you want the statistics, it's the road less traveled. Obviously, the independent ones are much rarer for many reasons. Maybe the biggest reason of all, well, one of them is ignorance. Not everybody knows how to achieve that independence, because part of our being shaped by our parents is that if they had resignation, we will have resignation. And once you don't have hope in yourself or belief in yourself, how could you ever become independent? So it's a catch-22. If the influences in your life taught you to be despondent and hopeless and feel you could never solve your such problems, how could you ever become independent? Because you can't free yourself of that. And yet you'll find people who are able to transcend the influences of their life. So what is the difference between the two? Is it just luck? Is it just that some people have some blessed gene? It's definitely not the circumstances, because I know people, and I'm sure you do, who've grown up in the harshest circumstances, all the odds stacked against them, the worst deck of cards, and turned into becoming the most refined human beings you may ever meet. And vice versa, people who are brought in privilege, every gift on the every gift, like on a silver platter, every opportunity, and screwed it up. And it could be also the other way around. There are people who grew up in very terrible circumstances and did succumb, and others who grew up in excellent circumstances and did rise to the occasion. So it's clear that this isn't just circumstances that are beyond our control. There are things that we can do. I don't know if anybody's ever documented it. I don't even know if it's really documentable, because the fact is we're also so different. So what works for one person may not work for other. But there is a formula. And the formula that I'm going to share with you is coming not from myself. It's not my concept. It's something I learned when I was in my mother's womb. But so did you. And I learned about it because I was taught. And then it resonated. And then I saw it worked. Now as a people, and that's why I mentioned the Jewish people, as a Jewish people is a great study, case study, because here you have a group of people who suffered perhaps more than any other people. I say perhaps just to be humble, but the truth is more than any other. There may have been people who suffered, but they didn't live to tell about it. So the paradox of the Jewish people is that they've gone through almost every type of persecution, from mass murder to mass expulsion to everything over and under all kinds of ingenious ways to destroy the soul or the body of the Jewish people. Literally the history of history, going back thousands of years. You name an empire, and you can describe what kind of impact it had on the Jews. And yet they are here today. And not here necessarily as a people of faith and strong religion or strong beliefs. Actually, they still argue as they always have argued. And they're as diverse as it gets. As a matter of fact, most Jews today are not even affiliated. Many will say they don't even believe. Many are Buddhists. Many are other seekers. And I'm not saying this to criticize or not. I'm just saying as a reality. But they're still here. So if you want to be a scientist, what do scientists really do when you want to test something? You test it in all environments. For example, to come to some type of scientific conclusion based on one circumstance is not enough. Let's say you do some experiment in a lab, and you come to a certain result. So we all know science has to be replicated. But not just replicated in different circumstances. Because it could be the conditions of the lab, may have been the temperature, the environment, may have been conducive to that result. So let's say it was an average temperature of 60 degrees. So you test it in 20 degrees, below freezing. Or in 90 degrees, 100 degrees. Real tests will be taken in much farther extremes. And then, the same results, you can then say that this is starting to develop into a strong theory. Because it's not just tested once. Under all circumstances, you see similar results. Then you know that you're dealing with something that's possibly a real truth. That's what real scientific experimentation is. So it's not just about experimenting, but it's also all kinds of environments to make sure that you can say it's a rule, it's a law, that under all circumstances, this is the result of a particular test. The same is true, actually, for anything that is true. Someone makes a statement, even if you can say it's true right now, the question is, will it be true tomorrow? Will it be true yesterday? Was it true yesterday? Under different environments, will it be true? As a matter of fact, the Hebrew word for emes, in Hebrew the letters have content and meaning, not just the definition of the words. So emes is made up of 3 Hebrew letters, an aleph, a mem, and a saf. The Hebrew alphabet consists of 22 letters. Aleph is the first of the Hebrew alphabet, saf is the 22nd letter, and mem is the 11th letter. It's not an accident. So the word truth consists of 3 letters, the first, the last, and the middle. Because as the Talmud says, anything truthful has to be true from the beginning, through the middle, through the end. If it's only true in the beginning, and doesn't carry through the middle or through the end, it's not true anywhere. It's relative truth. So it's interesting, the word emes. And just for the record, the word sheker, which is the antithesis of truth, sheker means lies, is the 3 Hebrew letters that stand right near each other, the next to last 3 Hebrew letters. Kuf, resh, and shin. In other words, the lies always gravitate near each other. They don't have the confidence to spread out. It's called, every lie needs another lie to support it. That's what you'll always see. So the word sheker means that there's a lie, and needs another lie right near it, because it says sheker ein le raglayim. A lie, deception, has no feet of its own. So it has to create other lies to support it. Now Churchill, just for the record, since we're talking about this, it was a very favorite quote of mine. Churchill once said that during war, the truth is so precious, you have to surround it with an army of lies. So I don't know if it's relevant to our discussion, but I just thought I'd throw it in there. Some food for thought. Independence Day thoughts. Musings. 4th of July musings. So to go back to our theme here, something has to be true throughout. So who as a people, as a nation, has been under every circumstance? The Jewish people. The best case study in history for resilience, for what secret is the secret of survival, is the Jewish people. And I'm not the first to say this. John Adams, Mark Twain for that matter, Tolstoy, the greatest writers, the greatest thinkers through history have said more or less the same. They said, what is this miracle, or what is it that the Jewish people have? Even those that hate the Jews admire this element. Because there's something extremely powerful to say a people that did not have an empire, wealth, armies, comparable, nothing close to anything that, for instance, the Egyptian Empire, or the Assyrian Empire, or the Persian Empire, or the Greek Empire, the Roman Empire, Spanish Empire. Jews never had such an empire. At best, there was a time when King Solomon ruled Israel, and it was a time of peace, but it was a certain short period of time, but never close to any of these empires. And yet, none of them can boast that here are our grandchildren. We're the grandchildren of Julius Caesar, or even of Aristotle. Someone can make a lot of money if he could prove he's the grandchild of Aristotle. No one's even making the claim. Once in a while, we get someone making a claim that they're the grandchild of Nicholas and Alexandria, the last Tsar of Russia. But that's just 100 years ago. So, where are the grandchildren? These are people of truth. And I'm not criticizing their systems or Aristotle, but it's interesting. Jewish people can trace their roots all the way to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We know where they're buried. And they're still fighting over it in Hebron. And I'm not saying this to pull rank, even though that happens to be the case, but I'm not saying it for that reason. No, really not. I'm just saying it as a case study of resilience, if you want a secret of survival. And as you'll see, it's connected very much to independence. So what makes something grow and what makes something fail? So we have the classic, the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, where he analyzes all the different causes and reasons. And then, of course, the analysis of other empires that have risen and fallen throughout history. Some, yes, no question, were a result of some natural disaster, an earthquake, a volcano, or it could have been other factors. But if you really look at it and study it, you'll find certain common denominators. Even the Roman Empire or others that were affected by the great volcano, or the Greek Empire for that matter, rather. It was not just that. There was already crumbling going on, a disintegration of power before the natural disasters. That maybe was the last nail in the coffin. You'll find it always comes down to something very simple, but also extremely difficult to overcome. And the proof is that's why no empire has ever been able to overcome it. It comes down to arrogance. Once you begin to think that you're too powerful and self-made, and that you are eternal, immortal, you cease to become that. Because your own self-deception begins to, number one, alienate others, creates conflict of interest, everyone feeling that they have that type of invincibility. As you'll see, basically, independence of human beings is really the independence of the inner soul. Once that's compromised, it's just a matter of time. There's no empire that can withstand the deterioration, the erosion of that the erosion of the independence that comes from the dignity of one's soul. And I'll tell a story to demonstrate this. It's actually a story related to the Hebrew calendar now. It's close to my heart. It's connected to my family and where I grew up. So this Shabbos, this coming Shabbos, is in the Hebrew calendar, it's the 12th day of Tammuz. Just a few days before the 17th of Tammuz, when we begin the 3 weeks, fast day, destruction of the temple. So the 12th day of Tammuz is a day that is celebrated in the Chabad world and actually outside of it as well, because in 1927, which would be now, what is it, 82 years ago, in the former Soviet Union. So you all know that the Russian Revolution was the end of close to 1917, 1918, World War I. And afterwards, the overthrow of the Tsar came the Bolsheviks. And the beginning of what's called the Soviet Union, communism. First Lenin and then Stalin, who came to power approximately those years, 27, once Lenin died. He made a great, great funeral for him, even though he was responsible for a lot of his problems. But that was very common in the Soviet Union. They were very good at making funerals. Because the bigger the funeral for the person who preceded them, the more they were honored. Look how I'm honoring the one before. So they killed their predecessor and then made a great funeral and then said, wow, we have to honor the leader. Only after their death. So Stalin, it's not a joke, Stalin was pretty much a good match for his counterpart later in Nazi Germany, Hitler. And the persecution of many people began severe in those years, especially in the late 20s and the 30s, reigns of terror. And of course, as usual, the Jews were always at the center of the storm. So of course, Marx wrote that religion is the opiate of the masses. And the communists implemented that. Religion was a threat to the concept of communism, which is loyalty to the mother, to the state. To the state that is going to care about everybody's interests equally. Religion was as a dual loyalty. You're loyal to some faith, to God. So it was seen as a threat. But first an ideological one, and then it became a practical one. And for the Jewish people particularly, where today most Jews actually originate from Russia. Some say there were over 10 million Jews in Russia during the turn of the century, 20th century. And it was the pogroms before the communism, in the Tsarist Russia, that led to the first mass immigration of Jews to America in the early 20th century. And then there was the second wave of immigration, which was a result essentially of Stalin, communism, and Nazi Europe, World War II. So what he did in Russia was, in the Soviet Union, they basically suddenly, whether it was 10 million, 8 million, no one even knows the numbers. Till this day, there's so many people in Russia that are Jewish who don't even know they were Jewish because their parents hid the fact from them so they shouldn't be persecuted. So everything suddenly closed down. Synagogues, kosher butcheries, mikvahs, ritual baths, circumcisions, everything, essentially the official, anything that was formal Judaism suddenly was forbidden. And many, many leaders said it's time to leave this country. But it's not so simple. Millions of people can't just pick themselves up. Didn't have the resources. Who would take them? There was one man, whose name is Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, the sixth Chabad Rebbe, the leader at the time. And his position was, you cannot leave. He cannot leave. I will not leave here because the captain of a ship doesn't leave till everybody does. And we have to do whatever it takes. He called in 9 people in a very secret meeting in Moscow around 1922 or 23. It was so secret there was no notes taken. It's only known from the people that were there what happened. And he did what we call a krisis bris. Krisis bris means a blood pact. He said to the 9 people, here we are, a minyan, 10 of us, and I want to make a promise, a vow, an oath, till the last drop of blood, that we will do everything it takes to keep the flame burning, of Jewish flame burning in this Soviet Union. And he had a plan. Underground synagogues, underground schools. Some say over 600-700 underground synagogues were established. Many of them remained there for 70 years until the Soviet Union collapsed in 1990. Now, did he save all of Judaism? Obviously not. But whatever humanly possible. Most of them were arrested and shot on the spot, these 10. My grandfather was one of them, my namesake. My name is Simon, is a name of my grandfather, who I never knew because he died in 1952. He did make it out. He got arrested and lived. He didn't live. He survived Siberia and then came out to Toronto, where he died in 1952. My father was left an orphan with 2 brothers at age 20. So he was one of those 10. But here's the story I wanted to share with you within this story. And that is that obviously the Soviet Union were aware of these activities. Not all the details, but they were aware. And they saw this Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson as a grand threat to them. But of all the people that really saw the threat, unfortunately and tragically, one doesn't even want to repeat it, were the Jewish communists. They were among the anti-Semites, they were the worst of them all. I'll let you analyze why Jews are that way, but that's how it was. And many of them were grandchildren of Hasidim, actually, who became avid, rabid communists and atheists, Jew haters. And they saw this Rabbi Schneerson as being a threat to them. They were called the Yevsektia. This was the Jewish unit of communism. And they were extremely, their viciousness was legendary, much stronger than the communists themselves. And they would hunt down, and they tried to find ways to get this man arrested. And they finally did. They arrested him in 1927. And there are many interesting, tragic, but profound stories that took place during this arrest because Rabbi Schneerson, the 6th Chabad Rebbe, documented it all in a journal. Which interesting, you want to know what he called it? He called it Masechta Gehenim, the tractate from hell. Because that's where he was. The torture, the killings, the beatings. And he documents it all, what happened during his period of time that he was arrested. It wasn't a long period of time, it was close to a month. The interrogations, they could have shot him any given moment, but they didn't. There was also pressure from international pressure, including from the president at the time, who was the president here, was 1927. No, not Roosevelt. Coolidge maybe, or Hoover, one of those two. Yeah. And who pitched for the Yankees that? Just to tell you, the Yankees were playing in 1927 while things were happening in the Soviet Union. You don't have to answer that, Mark. I'm sure you know. Different worlds. So listen to this. So this Rebbe is with these Yevsektia, these Jew haters, Jewish Jew haters. who spoke Yiddish and whose grandparents were Hasidim of this Rebbe's grandparents. To the point that when they arrested him, so one of them said to him, Rebbe, in Yiddish, he said, let me carry your bags, as my grandfather carried your grandfather's bags. So he answered him in Yiddish, he said, no, dein Seide, I'll translate in a minute, hat getragen de Päcklach von mein Seiden, wo mein Seide gewollt gehen. Und du willst nehmen meine Päcklach, wo du willst dich soll gehen. Das nicht. He said, your grandfather took the bags of my grandfather and went where my grandfather wanted to go. You want to take my bags and take me where you want to go, that I'm not interested in. And this was his attitude throughout. No cooperation. As a matter of fact, he writes, he's fluent in Russian, he would not cooperate. He said for his own spirit and for his own determination, for his own self-esteem, he made an internal decision that he would cooperate with nothing. Everything they wanted, he would defy, which was like insanity in a way. Because he was in a situation that wasn't exactly due process and justice. People were shot like flies. He insisted to have his tefillin. I mean, it's crazy things in those times. And he insisted to speak Yiddish, not Russian. So it's all part of his own, I guess, psychological need to demonstrate he's not going to succumb and be intimidated by them. So one of them pointed a gun to his head. The Jewish grandson of Hasidim says to the Rebbe, he says to him, listen, Rebbe, enough is enough. He pointed a gun to his head, a loaded gun, and said, this little thing here, this pistol, has made many people change their minds. And it's going to make you change your mind too. And the Rebbe answered him calmly. He said, this little toy, he called it this tzatzka, can intimidate someone, can frighten someone that has one world and many gods, but not someone who has one God and many worlds. And when he said to him, yes, okay, he didn't shoot. He said, we'll see, Rebbe, who prevails, you or us. And the Rebbe said, yes, we'll see who prevails. Well, this guy ended up being shot himself, plus all his cohorts. Their grandchildren, I have no idea where they are. But I could tell you that Rabbi Schneerson survived, came out of Russia, came out of Europe, came to the United States. And I'm a testimony, as so many others, of being students of his and his students. So who prevailed? But the story is the key thing here. He wasn't playing games when he said this thing about the toy. It's not like he was looking to die and he was trying to mock them or bait them. He was telling them the secret. You can only kill someone that's a slave. You cannot kill an independent person. Because if he doesn't have one world, he has another world. And if it won't be him, it'll be his children. And if it won't be his children, it'll be his grandchildren. This is not a game. And the Rebbe had no problem saying it because he knew he was a child of people who came before him, who also suffered and had the same attitude. And he knew he was a descendant of Mordechai, who didn't bow to Haman when Haman almost killed all the Jews. And still, no one knows who Haman's grandchildren are. But we know who Mordechai's are. Actually, it says in some places that Haman's grandchildren ended up becoming students in Bnei Brak in the yeshiva there. You can interpret that any way you like, but it's usually interpreted in a positive way. That from the Talmidei Bnei Banav Shel Haman is Talmidei Bnei Brak. And this is not theory or someone's imagination. This is documented, and not in one family, in thousands of families. You're all witnesses, living witnesses, whether you know it or not. When the Jews marched to the gas chambers, or were marched, it's reported that they sang, some of them, Ani Mamin. I believe in complete faith that God will bring Mashiach, even if he delays. Some of them said Shema, said Kaddish. And you think, what kind of craziness is this? They're suddenly talking to God. They should have been cursing God at the time, or denying God after what was going on. And many did. Where did they get this from? Why would they say Shema at such a time? The answer is because they went down, look, You can take our bodies, but you cannot take our souls. You can kill us, but you cannot kill our faith. And if it won't be us, it'll be our children. Now, at the time, you could have said it's insanity, but look today. Those that survived have not just survived, have thrived, have built families. Many Holocaust survivors will tell you, our greatest vengeance is my children and my grandchildren. That's my vengeance. Not bombing, suicide bombing of bars and cafes in Berlin. It's our grandchildren. And this is not an isolated incident. It's the story of 4,000 years. So let's go back now to Independence Day, what independence is. Freedom is a very deceptive word. Usually you say, I'm a free person, I'm a free spirit. We usually think of freedom as the opposite of being in prison. Like the absence of a slave is a free person. Well, my friends, if that's the definition, then love is the definition of absence of hate. And peace is the definition of absence of war. Much more than that. Love is not just the absence of hate. Love is a condition of its own. I use the word condition intentionally. Sometimes it's not. It's a condition that we'd rather not have, but it's a condition nevertheless. Yes, sometimes we've been hurt in life so much that if you don't have hate in your life, you think you already have love. Well, sadly, I heard it more than once in my life, but recently I heard it again. It can make you cry. A person telling me they're married, I said, so how's your marriage? I don't ask that question that often anymore, for many reasons. Because one guy once told me, he says, well, let's put it this way. The good news is I'm not in a bad marriage. Which means he got divorced. That's what he said. So this person tells me, pretty good. I was very happy, but I didn't look very happy. He didn't look happy when he said that. I said, can you share more? I mean, I know this person, and we've talked. She said, look, I've been hated my whole life. I've been hated by my parents. I've been hated by my schools. I grew up in a hateful environment. So for me, for the day that I don't have hate, I already feel love. And I cried, honestly. I didn't know what to say. Should I say that I'm happy for him? So in a subtle way, respectful way, I said to him, well, you know something? You expect more. You can expect more than that. You deserve more than that. But it was sad to me because he lowered the bar of his standards so low based on his experiences. So freedom is not just the absence of slavery or the absence of being in prison. Most people say free. Yeah, free. I can do whatever I want. That's what everyone will say when you ask, what does freedom mean? I can do whatever I like. So who's not free? A few hundred years ago when there was a monarch or the church, you couldn't do whatever you like. They could arrest you if you did anything. Now you can go out, you can march. Certain things maybe. You can't go streaking in certain places. Okay. But besides that, I can do everything else. And you do see people doing everything, exercising that freedom. But you don't have to be very intelligent to know that's not the definition of freedom. I know people who are so free, every night they're somewhere else. But if you study their lives, you know why? They're not because they're free spirits. Because they're terrified to stay in one place more than one night. So they're running for their lives. So just because they can do anything, they can go anywhere, or they have the money to go anywhere, doesn't mean you're free. It just means that you're running around. On the other hand, I've seen people, in my own life, I've seen people on a Rosh Hashanah or on just a Shabbos or other time, under a tallis, a prayer shawl, for 8 hours praying without moving. And if you didn't know, you'd think maybe someone tied them up or they're chained to the seat. But if you did know, and you look inside under the tallis, you'd see a person who's the freest spirit. Because he chose to be there. No one put him there. And he chose to sit there for hours, to meditate, to pray, to cry, to laugh, to sing to God. So just because somebody is very mobile doesn't make them free. Just because someone has millions of frequent flyer miles and people are very proud of the fact, doesn't mean they've traveled very far. Technically, their bodies have traveled. There are people who may have been in one place their entire life have traveled more than some people who fly all over the place. Because true movement is not about physical movement, it's about spiritual movement. There's some people who are everywhere. They go to every party. And they can travel anywhere in the world. But you look at their lives, they're no different than they were 20 years ago. No change, not more refined. Their personality has not changed. They're not grown. Same spoiled brat. They've not grown with any relationship. All about themselves. They're as selfish as they were then. And then there are people who don't have all these liberties, who don't have all these so-called gifts and opportunities and luxuries. And yet, their movement on a personal level, they've grown. They're more giving, love, they build families. It's not exclusive, obviously. You could have, as I said earlier, the reverse. But I'm pointing out that's not the translation of freedom. Most people will say, give me all the money in the world and I'll be the freest person. Really? Show me a person that is, one person that is free because of money. And I'm not talking about what you see on the outside. They can buy, they can own a plane. They can go wherever they like anytime. So what is the definition of freedom from a Jewish point of view, or even a psychological point of view? So I'll give it to you. The answer is, freedom is not to do whatever you think you like. Because remember, who determines what you like? Maybe someone else determined all these so-called options of yours. Freedom is doing something that is not imposed upon you by any force outside of your own soul. That's freedom. So if you grew up in a home where every day your father or mother were traveling salesmen, and they travel all over the world, they're all over the place, you can just be, your mobility is simply a creature of habit. It has nothing to do with freedom. However, if it's something that comes generated from within yourself, and no one imposed it, not your parents, and not your educators, and not society, and not movies, and not novels, and not books, but it's coming from your own inner soul. And it makes no difference whether it looks like there's a lot of options. You chose it because it reflects your wish, who you are. That's freedom. The reason that's so difficult to access is because we don't even know who we really are. Maybe your choices you're making right now is what your mother and father chose, but it's just coming through you right now because you've been programmed. Or maybe because society's demands on you, or peer pressure. Independence is not just a simple matter. Independence means being independent even of having to answer to someone or having to conform to other standards and expectations. When that Rebbe in 1927 said to his captor who was carrying the gun, so you think the guy wielding the pistol was the free one, and the slave, the prisoner, was the Rebbe. Yeah, that's what it looks like. But that's the naked eye. Who was free? The one that was free inside. And it was the Rebbe when he said, this can only frighten someone that has one world and many gods, meaning like you. So every day another god, but one world. So once you're shot, you're over with. That's at the end. But it can't terrify someone who has many worlds. I have diversified my portfolio, let's put it that way. You put all your eggs in one basket, that basket's taken, it's gone. Look at people who are devastated by economic downfall. Not that I wish it upon anyone. The devastation is direct proportion to what else other baskets you have. You have no family, no love. You betrayed everyone that was close to you, and all you had was money. Yeah, your money's taken away. It's pretty much going to be the end. And we don't think about it at the moment because it's the illusion of power. I mean, everyone should be blessed in every given way. But it's diversification, right? But diversification doesn't just mean between stocks, bonds, and treasury notes. It means also diversification of what our standards are. Many worlds and one God. That there's one high standard that never changes. That's not man-made. And the rest, you have many, many options. And if one is not working, there's always another option. I once met a guy who I don't particularly like very much. Not for any good reason or bad reason, but a very miserly fellow. And I said to him, sir, can I ask you something? I mean, I know him many years. He said, can I ask you a favor? He said, no. The answer is no. Whatever you want, the answer is no. Which is typical of him. And then, so I walk further, okay, fine. He runs after me. He says to me, now that I set the stage and the answer is no, now what do you want? So I said to him, listen, I'm not interested in talking to you if that's your attitude. So he said, I taught you the most important lesson in life. You have to be able to say no. And then everything is optional. You know? Now, I would never want to be the way he is because he's that way in business. And that's his attitude. He's in love with nothing. Like someone else told me, some, so to speak, secret in business. He says, never fall in love with your products. You know? Because you never know when it's not going to be there anymore for you. So I'm not talking about that. That's a person who has no commitments, who's so-called non-committed that they never can be hurt. That's a scared child that is afraid to commit to anything. Yes, I agree, you don't fall in love with your toys and with your buildings and with your money. But there are some things in life that are worth falling in love with because they're not man-made. And nobody can take them away from you because no one gave them to you. What that Rebbe had was exactly that. You can't take away from me what you didn't give me, he was telling him. People who feel that everything they have was given to them or is man-made, even if they're not conscious of it, of course it could be taken away because it was given to them. How secure can you be with that? How independent can you be? So the secret of real independence is a soul essentially. It's your own soul, which lays trapped and waits because it is locked and trapped inside your body. When I say body, I don't just mean body. It means inside this physical universe, inside your ego, inside your self-interest, and inside all those forces that have shaped you, that you are a victim of, until that one moment when you say, I have something that is not shaped by anybody, and I can access it. And when you access that, that's where independence begins to flow from. And everybody has that ability. It's not easy, because it's a twofold process. First of all, you have to stop worshiping the things you worshipped, because those are the things that are your undoing, that do not allow you to be free. And second, you have to find something that you can worship, that's not man-made, that nobody can take away from you, which is really your own inner soul, your own spirit, your divine spirit. Not that easy to do when you're already in the rat race and so much is going on. But it's absolutely doable. The first and foremost thing is you have to know of it and then act on it. And there are many ways to act, which I'll discuss in a few moments. So to reiterate, to sum up, basically it comes down to this. Yes, July 4th is Independence Day, and it's beautiful to know that we have a country where we have certain basic guaranteed rights. And I have no doubt that the Founding Fathers, in a way, found their own inner soul's independence to give them the strength to break away from King George and the other oppressive forces. And it wasn't easy to do because it would have been so much easier just to surrender. But what we're left with today is just the gift of freedom of country. It doesn't mean your soul has been emancipated. So we are basically like, imagine our great-grandparents, or in this case the founding fathers of this country, with their blood, sweat, and tears, paid the price and the wars to find independence and freedom. They didn't take it for granted. And then they give it to their grandchildren. And here's the United States today. So here you have a playground. It's yours. But you didn't earn this playground. So we're in a free country. It's true. To some extent, that is. But we haven't earned this freedom. It's like a playground given to you. And it's, as long as it's a playground that you play in, that doesn't mean you're free. Then you're trapped by its so-called luxuries and comforts. Comfort has its own slavery. Yes, it's not a monarch dictating what you do at every given moment, but it's your own self-indulgence that becomes your dictator. And you become a victim, a slave to your own self-interest. And the more comfortable your life, the more victim you'll become. Because you convince yourself, look, I have all this stuff. It was all given to me. And then you delude yourself thinking, not only was it given to me, it must be I'm better than other people, because why do I have it and someone else doesn't? And if someone says to you, yeah, what makes you exactly better? What did you do to deserve? You just were lucky to be born into this family. But no one wants to hear that. They say, what do you mean? What do you mean? We're special? And you then start, it's an elitist thinking, it's delusional. And it doesn't help emancipate a person. Which is the sad reason that so many people find some deeper freedom, you know when? When they're traumatized. Why is it when people suffer loss, death, other traumas, suddenly then something wakes up? Why? Because till then they're living in delusion. I'm not wishing upon anyone that, but the reason for it is the only way that a person can find that deeper truth is when the veneer is cracked. As long as you think you're living, as long as you're comfortable with your comfort zone, nothing can get in. No light can get out and no light can get in. It's like a dark black hole that's convinced itself that it's a bright sun. So independence means a person is able to free themselves from the shackles, not of oppressors or slave masters or monarchs or the church or religious authority. It's the shackles of your own making, or the making that you are, or the product that you are, or a product of your environment, your home, and so on. This takes serious effort. To cut the umbilical cord on this level doesn't come easy. So what are the methods to achieve something like this? So it always begins with awareness. Awareness is half the cure. Of the disease is awareness. Why? Because awareness, even though it doesn't do anything physically, well, maybe it does, but even though you don't see a visible, but for instance, you're walking into this room and the lights are off. So everything that's in the place right here is there, but you can't see it. What will happen? You'll bump into it. You can get hurt. So what happens when you turn the lights on? Nothing changed. The room is still the same room. Same tables and chairs and steps and so on. The only thing is now you see, a table a table you sit by, you don't bump into. Steps, you go up and down, you don't fall down, God forbid. So light, or in this case, awareness, doesn't change realities, but it changes perspective. And when perspective changes, there's an opening. If you think you're in a illuminated room, when the room is completely dark and you can't see where you're going, there is almost no way out of that. Because you convince yourself you're seeing. So that's why awareness is such a vital thing. Hopefully we can achieve awareness without trauma, without something shaking us up. Sometimes, unfortunately, that's the only thing that really can shake someone out of the reverie, out of the sleep. But awareness can be achieved even without it if you really put your mind to it. How? Hang around people who are aware. You'll see people who don't like awareness will always hang around people who are not aware, because it reinforces their delusion, and it's very comfortable. So if you're hanging around comfort zones and you're very comfortable with your life, which I often ask people, how comfortable are you? And they think that's like a good thing to say, I'm comfortable. So they say, I'm very comfortable. I said, what can I say? You know, God forbid, I'm not suggesting people should be uncomfortable in that sense or in any way hurt. But I mean, too much comfort borders on what's called animal bliss. And animal bliss borders on no moves in your life. If there's no angst, and there's no challenge, and there's no impetus, what's going to make you move? Healthy competition, determination, ambition. These all are driven by some type of lack, some type of hunger. As I often mention, obviously too much hunger without resolution is equally problematic. But no hunger at all, no thirst, no yearning. How would you like a life with no yearning, with no dreaming? You just want to have dreams and aspirations, and not just dreams and aspirations, from time to time, some resolution, some fulfillment. So it's a balance, but never one without the other. So awareness sometimes requires being around people who are aware. And it's not always going to make you comfortable, because they may point out things to you don't want to hear at the time. But if it's people you can trust, people that love you, you care about you, you know they're not there to hurt you. So that's step one, being around environments like that. You're around environments that shed light, it usually illuminates the darker recesses of things you don't usually see. Secondly, that it does is it also allows you access to people who may be a little more objective than you, which is the second step. Someone can throw you a rope when you can't throw it to yourself. A person can't pull themselves out by their ears from a pit because you're stuck in your own trap. So that's where awareness and exposure of that level is so necessary. The second thing you learn is that when you have a little of that awareness, even a little of it, it does begin to create a yearning for more. And that's where the next exercise comes into play, and that is to act upon this awareness. This has its own challenges. It's not so easy, because now we're talking already about breaking habits, doing things differently than you usually would have. Obviously, with awareness and with objective friends, it makes it easier to do so. But it still takes effort. It really means introducing into your life some new habits or new mechanisms, behavior mechanisms, that allow your soul to emerge, that allow your independence to exercise its true freedom. And you cannot imagine how exhilarating it is. And I've seen it myself in my own life, I've seen it in others. The first times you begin to feel you did something that you did and no one else. It may be small, but it's independence. And this could be simple things like a gesture that you would make to someone who's in need, visiting a sick, something you wouldn't do usually. And you did it because you simply want to, not because someone programmed you, not because someone demanded it. You chose to do so, not precisely because it's not an obligation. It's because of from the goodness of your own heart. That's when you begin to exercise a voice that is yours and yours alone. So we are essentially a product, as I said, of many factors, starting with our parents and our early environments and our childhoods and our schools. For good or for bad, there may be even very positive influences there, but it's still not you. It's still someone else's influence. At what point do you own your choices? So the awareness helps you start seeing yourself in a new way, and the actions are the ones that you act upon it. It's actually quite, as I said, exhilarating and a breath of fresh air the first time you do something, not the way your parents would have done it. Usually we react the way they react. Sometimes we react exact opposite because they reacted that way. But that too is a result of them. It's when you do it because it's coming from you. As I said, these are sometimes small steps, but they're yours. And when they're yours, it changes everything. Will it completely turn you into a complete free person, free of every past experience? That's not the goal. We're not talking here, it's not a contest. It's about emerging, essentially. Emerging as an individual. If you want an example, one that everyone has, remember the first time you left home to summer camp, or traveling somewhere, or to school. So initially, it could be very terrifying. Well, for some, it was a very, very happy moment because they got out of unhealthy environment. But let's just say even a healthy home. So it's a new challenge. But what happens to you usually? You go to school, summer camp. So there are challenges, but you for the first time, begin to take your own steps. Initially, it's very disconcerting even. But then after a while, now, at this point, I'm sure all of us don't even remember those initial steps. I do, at times, think about those times because they were like your first steps. They may not have been very significant, but they were your first steps that you did, and you had to make a choice, and you wouldn't turn to your mother or father. Didn't feel the need to turn to them. Again, even if it's healthy parents, this is a necessary step in life. If it's unhealthy parent, obviously it's necessary because it becomes yours. Now, the question is, how long does it last? That's more complicated because then, instead of your parents, now there's new peer pressure that begins making demands on you. People around you, expectations, your boss. And then your own psychological stuff, your fears, your insecurities, your unknowns. That's why that story with the Rebbe, even though none of us should ever be tested with a gun to our heads, is so powerful because it's essentially the statement that you have inside of you something that nothing can really scare off. Because no one gave it to you, no one can take it from you. And you have many worlds, yes, many worlds. Thank God we live in a time where we don't have to choose between life and death. But within life itself, we can choose between life and death, a living death. It means we have choices of what we are going to invest in. All of us have those choices. But as you see here, as you leave here this evening, you'll see, as they say, when you throw a rod, a stick up into the sky, you throw a stick up, it'll always fall back on its head, which means we all gravitate back to our natural so-called habits. So it's going to take a little effort to change that. So even though you may be inspired or something you've heard here that you haven't heard before or you're motivated, the challenge is going to be after things settle down and tomorrow morning is a new day. which really means not a new day, just means the same thing, old thing, and you're going to go back to who you always were. However, there's one however. If you add something new to your life, which means like tomorrow morning or even tonight, go to sleep in a different way, as I often suggest, without the television on, or without a newspaper in your nose. Read something spiritual. You wake up in the morning, instead of the usual ritual, take a minute or two and say that classic prayer, Moda'ani, acknowledge, thank you for returning my soul to me. Introduce new things into your life. And I don't mean lip service, I mean heartfelt. Those little things of shifting, small shifts, change everything. I was never there, but I heard from somebody who recently visited North Dakota or Minnesota, right at the Canadian border, where there's a little brook of water. Little brook, you can literally walk on it. You could stop it even. You could put your foot there or put something and impede it. And this little brook of water ends up becoming the Mississippi River. A little more south. So essentially he was sitting there and he said to me, in other words, if I put something here and I block it long enough, I could just close off the whole Mississippi River. And of course, Mississippi River is not the biggest river in the world. It's not small. So everything is about small steps at some point where later it becomes something that you can't even imagine that it's stoppable. It's small shifts. You look at all the biggest storms in nature. They never begin as a big storm. They begin with some little disturbance. A low pressure system, heat and cold meeting in the wrong place. And then it builds and builds. Now, obviously in nature that's a healthy thing as long as, thank God, it doesn't hurt anybody. It's necessary for the balance. So you see everywhere in the world nothing begins dramatic. Everything begins with a small step. Nothing great has ever began without a human being breathing in and out and doing something one moment. But how many moments like that actually give birth to and are the genesis of something great? Very few. But they all began with a moment. They all began at a particular decision was made at a given second. See, when we look at it, we see already the big Mississippi. We see the big corporation. We see this. We don't see the moment when the person was in the shower and they thought of the idea and then look what happened. So we all have that opportunity any given time. It's just that you have to believe that you have it inside your soul and that you can access it. And not believe the myth that everybody tries to convince everybody, like the blind leading the blind, that we are victims of everything around us. It's not true. It's true if you want it to be. It's true if you want to buy into that, and many people like that, because if you're a victim, I don't feel like I'm a victim, because we're all victims. So, we're all, it's like misery loves company. If everybody's failing, you don't feel like you're a failure. Well, the Jewish people never bought into that myth, which is maybe one of the reasons they were so hated. No one wanted a witness to success. If every empire failed, why shouldn't the Jewish empire fail? As soon as you see the Jews around, it means everybody else failed. It's not very comfortable to find out that all the companies failed except one. But there's a reason for it. It wasn't because the Jews were necessarily like a better company, because they never lost sight that it's not man-made things that keep things living, that it's connection to something, one God and many worlds. That's the secret. So as we stand here, Erev July 4th, almost Erev, pre-Independence Day, so I thought it's some thoughts to ponder upon when you're on the beach and you're really like trying to experience freedom, just lying on the beach. You can do whatever you like, frolic, and so on. But remember, even on beaches, we still have our psyches. It's hard to take vacation from, as I said, some of the ghosts that haunt us and our skeletons. So just to make you a little, maybe uncomfortable next time when you vacation, you remember Rabbi Jacobson's thoughts for Independence Day. But the truth is, as you all know, the point here is not, some people say, I make happy people miserable and miserable people happy. That's not my intention. That's not the goal. The goal here is to really actually to have that vacation and freedom, but also perhaps discover another dimension of freedom from within. And both are necessary. I'm not suggesting we shouldn't take it easy, relax. But it's a good time to really focus on this. And what better day? They call it Independence Day. So might as well think about, okay, how independent am I? Are you? So, in that spirit, I want to wish everybody a happy holiday, happy Independence Day, true independence. And look at me, look at us, the Meaningful Life Center. We're trying to emancipate some people, starting from ourselves. So it's your choice, the blue pill or the red pill, okay? But then there's no turning back. The sad thing is that you can turn back. See, there in the Matrix, there was no turning back except that guy. But here you could, because sadly we all gravitate back to our habits. So you have to take this pill every morning to keep awake. But it's not a pill. It's called Modani, or it's other reminders of things that connect us to a more soulful place, things that are timeless, beyond time. And the challenge, as the Shulchan Aruch opens up, which is the code of Jewish law and its wisdom, tells you right away what's going to be the most difficult part. Would you believe that the opening statement of all statements in the code of law is, Al yevish mipnei hamaligim, do not be ashamed of those that will laugh. See, do not be ashamed of those that will mock, that will laugh. Because conformity is ultimately the greatest challenge. We don't want to stand out. And remember, victims love victims. So conformists love conformists, because then it doesn't look like anyone's conforming. So anyone that stands out is going to be, I don't want to say laughed at, but you stand out. You are going to be a little different. I'm not suggesting you have to do crazy things or make somersaults or any of other stuff like that. But there's a certain element of a certain aloneness when you are a pioneer, when you don't buy into the myth. So the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Law, begins telling us that. At the same time, that shouldn't scare anyone off. It's about being you. Who is it? I think my son told it to me the other day. Thought it was a good line. It's a bumper sticker, but it's a good line. He says, you were born an original. Don't become a copy. So we're all born originals, and every one of us is an original. And our challenge is not to become a copy. And I know none of us like to think we're a copy, but let some objective people weigh in on that as well. So with that being said, may all your souls find their voice, their song, a unique song. And we are all here to help each other. So please see me that in that capacity. In any given way, you can access myself, Velvel, who just comes from down under last night, Sydney, Australia, to bring the meaningful evangelical message. Not exactly. Right, Velvel? So you bring us regards from Sydney, Australia. And please, okay, good. Online too? So I wave to Sydney, Australia. I know New Zealand is not watching, that I do know. What time is it now there? Okay, lunchtime. You're supposed to be working, my friends. Do they know July 4th is there? Independence Day is American creation. Okay, only Americans are truly independent. Well, if you heard what I said tonight, you know that's not really true. It's not about geography. So we should definitely appreciate our blessings that our grandparents did not have, but we have our own challenges that they also didn't have, because in many ways they had that focus, they had that sense of mission. And as I said, I wish it upon all of you and myself and everyone. And please see, we're all in this together. The Meaningful Life Center offers these classes. Tomorrow night, Philip will giving his class at 7 p.m. And as well, we send out a lot of stuff by email nowadays, and the website. Online is a whole new department, even though I love to see everybody personally, but I do know there's some people in their bubble baths and other comfort zones watching this discussion about not being in your comfort zone. And we get the best of both worlds, you know. But I will conclude with this story I read a while back. There was this executive, a big businessman who owned a company, and he went on one of these retreats, these weekend retreats, what they call the Iron John weekend retreats or something like that, where men got together to bond and celebrate their masculinity, being that they've been so emasculated in our times. So he goes on this trip with these men. They're wearing skins. They're grunting, mountain climbing, back to the primordial male. And comes back after this weekend, and he's sitting and having lunch with some of his colleagues. And he's telling them about how he really sweated and grunted and all that type of thing over this weekend. And it cost him a good few $1,000s. Meanwhile, one of the workers who really sweats all day for him, one of the blue-collar workers in his company, hear him. So he says, boss, if you want to sweat, you should just come join us in the engine room for a little while. So the boss says, I don't have time for that. I'm busy all week. Once in a while, I schedule this thing for the weekends. So he said, listen, boss, sweating when you want to sweat ain't sweating at all. Okay. So, keep that in mind. This class has been dedicated generously by a good friend, Mark Belinsky. Became your seat. In honor of his grandmother, Sarah Bat Moshe, on the 10th of Tammuz, and by Velvo Farkash, in honor of the bar mitzvah of his nephew, Menachem Feldman, in Sydney, Australia. So mazel tov to Menachem Feldman in Sydney. We're all connected, as you see, via the subatomic particles. And I wish everybody who is celebrating a simcha, if you'd like us to dedicate something, please see me or Velvel or Golda Malka at the door. And with that, may everyone should have a very pleasant week, good vacation if that's what you're doing. We'll be here throughout the summer. We don't go anywhere. Next Wednesday, as we continue, and the topics are all listed on our website. We have a calendar that goes for several months ahead. And if you're thinking about your high holiday plans, we're already beginning to discuss that as well. So you can begin to speak to Velvel or myself about that as well. So I wish to see you hopefully every week, but if I don't see you next week, I'm sure the next. And always feel free to bring any friends. And of course, I send out a weekly email, which is may find useful. I work hard at it as well. If you'd like to get that, it's a free thing. So just leave your email address, and I'll be happy to send it to you. And with that being said, thank you very much. Everyone have a good night. Thank you.